Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We're on Aging Ebony, Black Boy Joy, Living and Thriving with HIV. So I hope all of you are doing well, and I want to thank you for taking the time out to be here today. So we will be highlighting some of the unique needs and concerns of Black gay men that are aging with HIV. And on top of that, we will be addressing the systemic barriers and the stigma and the gaps in healthcare that they face. Okay. So for this webinar, we will be featuring a guest speaker who has the lived experience that can help providers better understand the needs of Black gay men with HIV. With this partnership, we aim to shine a light on the importance of the listening to Black gay men with who tell their stories, and we hope that 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 this webinar is a first step in that journey. All right. So again, welcome to this. I am I am Darrell. I'm joined by Fabian, and we are from the Alliance Health Project, and this webinar is made possible through the collaboration with San Francisco Department of Public Health and of our very special guest speaker, Terry Dyer. Okay, one thing is I do want to note that this meeting is being recorded, and a link to this will be sent out to all participants. All right. All right. So the main goal today of the webinar is to educate HIV providers about the unique needs and the challenges and the healthcare disparities that gay Black men who are who sorry about that, who are aging with the HIV face. And we also aim to celebrate their courage and their strength and their stories. Okay, so if you have any questions about the webinar, anything but that comes up while the presentation is going, can you please put those in the question and answer feature, and then we will answer those questions mostly at the end, but we possibly could answer some during. Okay, excuse me. So about our guest speaker, it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce our guest speaker, Terry Dyer. He is an award-winning author. He's an activist. He's an Emmy winner who raises HIV/AIDS HIV/AIDS awareness and develops community programs and grants that foster LGBTQ engagement. All right, Terry Dyer has worked and volunteered in many organizations throughout San Francisco and Sacramento in the field of HIV. Since 2007, he has served as a member of the San Francisco LGBTQ Speakers Bureau. He and the organization aim to dispel homophobic and transphobic violence by educating people about the everyday lives of those in the LGBTQ plus community. He wrote the book, Letters to a Gay Black Boy, sparking discussion on racism, homophobia, mental health, family, and love. He is someone that I'm proud to know. I'm proud to call him one of my mentors and the inspiration of why I still continue to do this work today. And among all those titles, I'm humbled and very proud to call him my friend, So without further ado, I give you the gift of Terry Dyer.
Gosh. Good morning or afternoon, depending upon where your time zone is. Thank you so much, Darrell, and your team at UCSF Alliance Project. I am truly, truly honored to be with you all today. Thank you for the invitation to celebrate, to educate, and to bring awareness to those that are living and thriving with the HIV virus, those have been impacted by the HIV virus, those that are in the healthcare field and serving the needs of those that are impacted by this epidemic. So thank you so very much for allowing me to be here today. I'm super, super excited to chat with you all today. So let's jump right in. As Darrell mentioned, my name is Terry Dyer. I am a consultant, an award-winning advocate, a motivational speaker, and a best-selling author. Over the years, I have just been described in many different ways: transformative leader, change maker, groundbreaker, and multifaceted force for impact. With these words while these words are very flattering to myself and many of us, it's actually quite simple for me. I have been fortunate to discover my true purpose, to serve, to uplift, and to advocate. My work is centered on supporting the most vulnerable and marginalized in our communities, standing for social justice, and driving meaningful change. And the best part, it never feels like work. Instead, it is a path I have forged, one that allows me to be part of something greater than myself. I'm sure many of you out there can connect on that. But at the core of it all, my purpose is very clear. It is very simple. It is to help. Next slide, please, if we've got those up.
I got it. Right.
Okay,
I got it.
awesome.
Share my screen.
Awesome. So here is a little bit more about my background. I was born in Kansas City, Kansas. Me and Toto are very, very good friends. We go way back. But I grew up mostly in California. From an early age, I was filled with very big dreams and endless curiosity. I wanted to be everything under the sun, from an athlete, a fashion designer, a lawyer, I do love to argue, and a singer. I started competing in track and field at just 4 years old, and by my early teens, I had become a junior Olympic champion in 3 events. At 7 years old, I had the unforgettable experience of competing on the acclaimed TV show Star Search, for those of us not to age us, but that was once a thing, before American Idol. I earned my first degree in vocal performance from Chico State University and my second degree in communications with an emphasis in public relations from Sacramento State University. At Chico State, I was fortunate to attend on a track and field, academic, and music scholarship. During my time there, I had the incredible opportunity to tour and perform opera in China. Later, while at Sacramento State, I also became an All-American volleyball player. After college, I built my career in both for-profit and nonprofit organizations, specializing in human resources and talent acquisition. For over 10 years, I worked as a recruiter with companies like Robert Half International, helping people find their dream jobs, a role that felt like a true calling for me at that time. While living in San Francisco, I was introduced to my first nonprofit organization called the Stop AIDS Project. And it forever changed the course of my life. I became the program director of an initiative dedicated to empowering, uplifting, and supporting Black LGBTQ community. That experience set the foundation for the next chapter of my career, shaping my commitment to advocacy and social impact. In 2020, I became the best-selling author of Letters to a Gay Black Boy. At that time, the Black Lives Matter movement was making a powerful impact, shifting narratives in our society. However, amid the conversations on racial justice, there was a noticeable silence when it came to the Black LGBTQ community. My book helped to fill that gap, giving voice to those often left out of the discussion. Since then, I have been in leadership roles such as director at SunServe and executive director, CEO of the World AIDS Museum and Educational Center here in South Florida. 1 year ago, I took a bold step and leap of faith, if I might add, and launched my own consulting firm. Living in South Florida, I've witnessed the urgent need for services and resources, particularly in healthcare, for those impacted by the HIV epidemic. My consulting business was created to support organizations in program and fund development, fundraising, grant writing, and operations. Now more than ever, I remain committed to standing with and advocating for those fighting this good fight. Next slide, please. This next slide highlights some of the honors, accolades, and accomplishments I have received over the past 5 years. As the legendary Susan Lucci once said, it was just great to be nominated. I take immense pride and honor in the work that I do, always striving to showcase dignity, integrity, and grace. Being recognized in this way means a great deal to me, but again, it does not feel like work when you are passionate and you believe in the importance of what needs to be done. There are two particular achievements I would like to highlight today. In 2023 and 24, I received a letter of recognition from the White House for my exemplary work. And I won an Emmy, as Darrell mentioned, for an Emmy Award for being featured in a documentary this past December. These two accomplishments are among one of the most proudest moments of my journey to date. Next slide, please. Next slide. For years, people told me that I should write a book, saying that I always had a lot to say. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I have a lot to say. At the time, I never really thought I would actually do it, but I was inspired by a desire to spark conversations on love, homophobia, family, mental health, and racism. I finally took that leap and wrote the book, Letters to a Gay Black Boy. My goal was to shine a light on cultural issues that deeply affect our communities. By sharing my own story, I hope to inspire conversations, serve as a voice for the voiceless, show others how to transform trauma and pain into purpose, empower people to stand in their authenticity, and elevate awareness of sensitive and taboo subjects. Next slide, please. Like so many, I have drawn inspiration and motivation from some of the greatest African Americans in history. People like Dr. Maya Angelou, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Sojourner Truth, and countless inventors, actors, athletes, and more. However, I found it more valuable to seek inspiration a little closer to home. As a young child, I was introduced to two individuals in our community who, unbeknownst to me, at the time were the first two Black teachers in our school district. They took me under their wings, not just in the classroom, but in church, music, and life. These teachers were Richard Newkirk and Marguerite Cole. Both exemplified allyship and guided me with an elegance, grace, talent, dedication, and immense pride for who they were. They were the epitome of Black excellence. As a track and field athlete, I was always in awe of female sprinters. I grew up to admire two of the greatest in history, Jackie Joyner-Kersee and Gail Devers. At 12 years old, I had the amazing opportunity to train with Jackie Joyner-Kersee, an experience I will never, ever forget. As someone living with HIV, I quickly learned about the incomparable Phil Wilson, one of the most prominent advocates for the HIV epidemic impacting the Black community. Known as the godfather of Black HIV/AIDS movement, Phil has become not only an icon, but also a dear friend and colleague. And lastly, I am honored to know David Jobin, a true advocate for social justice, diversity, and inclusion. He leads a foundation here in South Florida and is a well-respected philanthropist, advocate, mentor, and most of all, important to me, a dear friend. Each of these individuals have consistently stood for what was right. They inspire me to challenge the double standards in work environments, navigate life's complexities with integrity and dignity, and remain authentic both personally and professionally. All of them have taught me that there is no justice without equity, and no equity without intentional action. Next slide, please. So this last slide is my contact information. I would certainly love to remain in contact with each of you. I thoroughly believe in networking and building lasting relationships. So I would love to connect with each of you, whether it was on LinkedIn, social media, phone, etc. I do believe in the power of collaboration and standing together as we fight this fight in our current political climate. So I would love to keep in contact with all of you. So that's it for the fun slides. Black gay men living with HIV face a complex web of challenges that are deeply rooted in systematic inequality, social stigma, and cultural silence. These challenges show up across multiple levels: healthcare, community, relationships, and internal identity. Let me start by saying this: we are still here. We are still living, still breathing, still creating, still loving, and yes, still thriving. To be Black, to be gay, to be a man living with HIV, these identities, each powerful on their own, when combined, have often been weaponized to marginalize, to isolate, and to silence. But let me tell you something. What was meant to break us has only deepened our brilliance. There's a narrative in this world that says if you're living with HIV, your life is over, that joy is off limits, that love is unattainable, that you're damaged goods. But I came here in this conversation to flip that script, because the truth is, joy is our birthright. And Black boy joy, even in the face of diagnosis, is real. It is radiant, and it is revolutionary. Too often, aging Black gay men are overlooked in conversations about community, about visibility, and especially about joy. We are seen as survivors, yes, but not often seen or even thought of enough as thrivers. But let me remind you, survival was the floor, not the ceiling. Thriving is the goal. Aging with HIV is not a shameful journey. It's a testament, a living, breathing testament that medicine has come far, yes, but so have we. We have come far in learning to love ourselves beyond society's expectations. We have come far in finding chosen family when our blood relatives have turned away. We have come far in educating others, mentoring the youth, advocating for resources, and fighting systems that once wrote us off. We've shown up, we've shown out, even when we were afraid, and we've kept showing up for ourselves and for each other. And still, aging with HIV can feel lonely. We don't always see ourselves reflected in the media, in healthcare campaigns, or even in our own communities. But here's what I know. We are enough. Then, now, and always. We carry wisdom. We carry style. We carry stories that deserve to be heard and honored. We carry grief. But we also carry laughter. We dance. We love music. We're sassy. We bring strategy. We carry joy. And that joy is radical. That joy is healing. So, to the Black gay man who just received his new diagnosis, you are not broken. To the one who struggled with disclosure, you are still worthy of love. To the one whose T cells may not be what they once were, your spirit is still divine. To every brother living with HIV, this is your reminder that you are allowed to feel joy. You are allowed to thrive. You are allowed to age gracefully, beautifully, loudly, and certainly unapologetically. We do not need pity. We need visibility. We need each other. We need the world to see that HIV is no longer a death sentence and hasn't been for quite some time. In fact, it is a life sentence, one that we get to define, one that we choose to live with fire, with flavor, with purpose, and with pride. So let's continue to tell our stories. Let's keep dancing. Let's keep dreaming. Let's keep loving. Because aging Ebony isn't just about getting older. It's about getting bolder. And although, excuse me, and through it all, Black Boy Joy certainly lives on. So before we get into the crux of today's conversation, does anyone have any initial questions, comments, before we dive deep into the various segments of today's conversation?
So far, we're looking good. No questions. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
All right. So we're gonna dive in. So I mentioned briefly some challenges that Black gay men still have that are thriving with HIV. Here's a little bit of a breakdown of some of those key challenges. The first that I'd like to address today is stigma and shame, and that comes from all sides. HIV stigma still runs incredibly deep, especially in Black communities, where conversations about sexuality, health, and vulnerability are often still to this day extremely taboo. Many Black gay men face double stigma, being gay and HIV positive, and sometimes what I like to call a triple threat when race is added into the equation. There's also internalized stigma that can lead to isolation, depression, or avoidance of care. Now, those three things are very, very crucial to highlight. We know that isolation is sort of the crutch, if you will. We hide behind closed doors. We hide behind screens. We hide behind telephones just to be visible, just to have that human connection and behavior, right? Depression. We all know that has been on an all-time high since COVID hit, right? It's always been there. It's just magnified in the last several years because of isolating in silence. Or avoidance of care. Many of us are thinking about where our next meal are coming from, how to keep the lights on, how to keep a roof over our head. So oftentimes our self-love, our self-care, that goes by the wayside because there's other life things coming into place. But we have to continue to draw attention to all of those in order to continue to fight against stigma and shame. The second thing I want to talk about is health disparities. Black gay men often experience racism and homophobia in healthcare, which can deter them from seeking care and or trusting providers. We often hear, and I know many folks could probably attest to this as providers and those that are giving resources, right? Clinicians, etc. We often hear that there is a disconnect with the Black LGBTQ community and those providers. Well, why? Why? I think we know why. And I think we need to start holding ourselves accountable to answer that question, why? There's often limited access to culturally competent care. Providers who understand and respect the lived experiences of Black LGBTQ individuals, also incredibly crucial. Prevention and treatment options like PrEP, PEP, or even consistent antiretroviral therapy may not equally be accessible. Now, I mentioned earlier, we have certainly come far with respects to medication, but over the last 6 to 7 months, I have been witness to certain counties in rural places like Texas that still don't have equitable access to healthcare, or they have to take a bus for 2.5 hours or a train for 2.5 hours, which means they have to take time off of work. A lot of folks still rely on that hourly wage. So we have to take accountability and start addressing the real issues that our folks in our communities are facing. Mental health challenges. The pressure of navigating racism, homophobia, and HIV status can lead to high levels of anxiety, depression, and trauma. Finding affirming, accessible mental health support, especially from professionals who understand the intersectionality experiences. It is a struggle. It continues to be a struggle. We have to normalize the conversation that Black LGBTQ experience is everyone's experience. It's all BIPOC experience, whether you identify with a small portion of it or you identify with all of it. We have to do a better job of taking care of folks that look like us and that don't look like us. Relationship and dating realities. These are always the fun conversations. Disclosure. Black LGBTQ folks have to come out over and over and over and over. Disclosure becomes a huge emotional labor. Never knowing if sharing your status will lead to rejection, fetishization, it's a real thing in our community, or violence. Those living with the virus have to essentially come out over and over again, regardless of what type of hookup or engagement or shaking of a hand with someone that can lead to an intimate setting. We have to constantly come out over and over again. That's a daunting task. That's a scary task. That's a task that many people don't have the necessary tools or resources to go through alone. Some experience of being fetishized for their race, then discarded when their HIV status is revealed. I've had that experience multiple times that I care to relive. And in fact, I've had that experience more times, surprisingly, in San Francisco's Castro than I care to remember. There's also the reality of feeling unworthy of love, a belief shaped by stigma, not by truth. We often talk about economic insecurity. HIV can impact a person's ability to work, maintain employment, or access opportunities, especially if compounded by systematic racism in hiring and housing. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we have certainly come a long way in the last 15 to 20 years, but we still have a duty and a responsibility to make these systematic situations disappear. Many rely on public assistance or nonprofit services that are often underfunded or inaccessible. Now, I'm not necessarily a political person, but we cannot have these types of conversations without drawing attention to our current political society. We all know that funds are continuously getting cut left and right in our current society. We now have to band together more now than ever. We have to hold hands, as cliche as that may sound, hold hands, stand in solidarity, and ensure that all of our services and our resources are not cut. We have to help each other more than we often have. Silo type of work is not the answer more now than ever. There is also a lack of representation and advocacy that happens in our communities. The voices of Black gay men living with HIV are often excluded from the table. In the media, policies, research, and leadership. when people speak about them instead of with them, there is a difference. It reinforces marginalization and leads to policies or programs that miss the mark. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record today, but so often we come together, we create these policies or these programs, but we're leaving out the people that matter the most. We're leaving out the most vulnerable and marginalized people in our communities because why? They're not the ones at the tables. We're not bringing back the actual needs that they're facing on the ground. Where I live here in South Florida, and I'm hoping that some of my colleagues and friends from South Florida are on this call today, we do a great job of building and asking people to come to our house after we've built it. What we don't do a good job of is understanding and meeting the community where they actually are, right? The folks showing up to these community town halls, these dialogues, these different types of events that we have, it's typically us. It's us supporting each other. But where's the actual community? Where are the folks that need it the most? Where are the folks that are pounding the pavement to ensure that they have food the next morning? Those are the folks' voices that need to be heard when we are creating this type of advocacy work. Black gay men living with HIV are resilient, powerful, and deserving of joy, love, and full, vibrant lives. But to get there, we need real conversations, better systems, and a commitment to justice, not just in theory, but in practice. And today, and we're here today to talk about, to participate in the important conversation called Aging Ebony, Black Boy Joy, Living and Thriving with HIV. So first, I want to talk about, with respects to this incredible conversation that the UCSF team has put together, I want to talk about claiming joy amidst the journey. So in 2006, March of 2006, I received my diagnosis of seroconverting to being HIV positive. Now, for those that know me, I was in a long-term committed relationship for over 4 years during that time period. What I learned later is that my former fiance lied about his diagnosis. He lied for an entire year and a half of our relationship, which meant that he knowingly and willingly infected me with the HIV virus. There was no joy, or the joy that I thought that I had at that time was not what it actually was, because it all stemmed from a lie. This happens very, very often in our communities. And for me, it's all about taking those stories, that trauma, and turning that into positivity, turning that into owning our own spaces. And I think as providers, as public servants, we have to do a better job of ensuring that those that we're serving understands, knows, and recognizes how to reclaim their joy based off of that trauma, based after those situations that they have to go through. I made a vow to myself during that time period. I made a vow to live. I made a vow to thrive. I made a vow to empower others, hence the work in being introduced to Stop AIDS Project and Curiel Noon and all the wonderful people that I had the opportunity to work with during that time period. It became incredibly important to me that folks didn't have to experience what I just went through. Feeling the shame, the lies, the degradation that something like this could happen to me. My statement of purpose turned into being one of redefining what it meant to, or what it means to age, to be Black, to be gay, and to live with the HIV virus. That completely changed the course and the trajectory of my life and my career back in 2006. The second part that I want to talk about is breaking the silence. This to me looks like the power of naming our truth. The stigma that still exists today, especially for Black gay men, really likes to do things like keep us in siloed spaces. It likes to isolate. It likes to keep a chokehold on who we can be, who we can become. But it's up to us to break that silence that is still trying to be impacted and pushed upon us. Silence harms us. Mental health, in ways of mental health, relationships, and community. It is my choice to speak up. And over the years, it has meant that I stand also in representation for folks that look like me, for folks that has similar, if not the exact same experience. It has also meant for me that I redefine the negative narrative around HIV. I will also give another example. I live in a space that is predominantly non-people of color. I'll just call it out. It's predominantly white. And so often at the table, there are very few leaders of color and those that are living with the HIV virus. Representation to me has turned into standing in front of those folks at the table and ensuring that they know we matter. People like me matter. People like me need to be heard. People like me you need to see that HIV can look like this. HIV can look like muscles. HIV can look like sports. HIV can look like a doctor, a lawyer, all those sorts of things. I realize that I must challenge the outdated beliefs and emphasize empowerment and strength that lives within those that are impacted by the HIV virus. Those living and thriving with the virus should never be silenced. The next part that I want to address is thriving beyond diagnoses. Living a full, vibrant life post-diagnosis is obviously crucial. Health and wellness were an immediate focus for me upon my diagnosis. During that time, I was still an athlete and playing sports, and I knew that I needed to remain healthy because that was a huge passion of mine. That was in my DNA, playing sports, and I wanted to continue. So often, my friends and family all call me a gym rat. Too disciplined with nutrition and tracking it with my trainer. It has always been about thriving, though. That has been the driving force for me. And I'm constantly finding that it's important to encourage folks to find what matters to them, find what inspires them to thrive despite being diagnosed with HIV. What does thriving look like in terms of a career, in terms of love, in terms of creativity, in terms of advocacy work? What does that look like for our community? For me, it has remained important and constant, which is important. I walk with pride and grace and dignity and presence, showing others that a diagnosis does not have to define who we are. It's just a small part of what makes us up and what makes us so great in this world. It does not have to lead to a path of destruction. So often we talk about the importance of treatment from a clinical and provider perspective, self-care and support. Now more than ever, we must take care of ourselves, because if we don't, how can we take care of others? Our whole self is also what matters to be cared for and supported, not just a small part. Many of us in this space of providing services to the community, but it is also crucial that we give ourselves that same tender, loving care, that we provide the space for us to step back and ensure that we are mentally and emotionally taken care of, so that way we can go out and pay that forward to the most vulnerable and marginalized folks in our communities. Finding support of our needs matters just as much. Now, aging while Black, gay, and positive. There are challenges to include health disparities, isolation, erasure in the media and community. There are these invisible pillars that aging Black, gay men in the community must focus on. We must acknowledge that often overlooked contributions and experiences of other gay Black men We have to continue the legacy. We have to continue the history. We have to continue to ensure that these generations that are coming after us understands what it means to be Black, to be HIV positive, to be gay. That's crucial. There is a beauty in all of them. They have brought wisdom. Folks have shown what survival looks like. They have presented strength, and they have created a legacy that people like myself, young professional, yes, I'm still young, that young professionals must continue to adhere, to strive toward. We must continue going from isolation to illumination. Say it with me one time. Isolation to illumination. One more time. Isolation to illumination. We must go from that. We must maintain this ideology of no longer allowing our brothers and sisters to be isolated, but to illume. Exploring the loneliness that comes from with aging and diagnoses, and the importance of visibility and community. Find your tribe. Find your tribe. Find that support where folks can uplift you and you have, like-minded minds and thought processes. Find what works for you. Find where you can be in a safe, not only a safe, but brave space to be around folks, to fellowship, to find what works for you and your lifestyle. Centering joy and agency, we must continue to redefine what aging means. It's such a daunting term, aging. No matter what your race is, yes, but it is a scary, scary term to think about. We're going to age, but guess what? That's a part of life. And from my perspective, I am a jokester. I like to tell Lexa jokes. From my perspective, with age comes wisdom. We age gracefully, just like fine wine. And we have to hold on to that. We also want to talk about joy as resistance. I loved that UCSF, the Alliance Project, came up with this topic, Black Boy Joy. So often over the last few years, we are hearing Black Girl Magic and those sorts of things, which is a wonderful, wonderful movement. But we as Black boys also have joy. It's a revolutionary act. We must give radical joy as resistance. But what does that look like? How do we encourage that? How do we make sure that folks are living authenticity to that resistance, to show that joy? How do we do that? What does that look like? We have to uplift joy as a radical act of resistance and healing for Black gay men. So often we jump from one thing to the next. Okay, that's over, let's move to the next. But we don't always allow the safe space for us to heal. And as providers, I think we also should be talking to our patients about how to heal from certain situations. Talk to those folks as if it's the whole self, not just when they come in for this symptom or that symptom. It's a whole entire self. That's what health and wellness is. This is imperative to show all of us that joy is possible. What does it look like? It is celebrating joy. It's a celebration. With all the negative stuff happening in our society and our culture right now, we definitely can find things to continue to celebrate. It is laughter. Universal language. It is laughter. It is self-expression. Figuring out whether it's through art, reading, writing, books, music, dance, we have to self-express as an essential tools of liberation. This must be done unapologetically and authentically. That's how we're going to heal. That's how we're going to turn pain into purpose, and sometimes purpose into profit. Not just surviving, but also choosing to live boldly and authentically. Stories or movements of joy that carry us through are also crucial. Living in a community, I've spoken about this a little bit, where I currently live in South Florida. It is a community that is not always welcoming. I specifically live in what's the equivalent of Castro in San Francisco. I live in Wilton Manors, the gay mecca as well. So often we talk about it's welcoming, it's inclusive, it's diverse. Where? I live in a community that isn't always welcoming. I live in a community that is not always diverse and inclusive. Even in the face of challenges and ridicule, I have forced myself to always keep a hold of my joy and empower others to do the same. We have to allow that to be present in spaces where we are not always represented. I want to talk about leadership, visibility, and representation. Being a voice for the forgotten and the responsibility that comes with that, I hold very near and dear. As I mentioned earlier, this is a duty, it is an honor, and a purpose for me. I implore others to have that same approach. It's the same as we never know from whom we are impacting. We never know who's watching. We never know we are going to inspire or we're going to motivate to step into their light, to step into their joy, to step in finding their authenticity. The cost, however, there is always a cost with visibility, as I've learned very, very implicitly in the last several years. There is a cost to visibility, but also the impact of showing up. Sometimes this is very tough because one might be in the spotlight, one might receive accolades and acknowledgments and all those sorts of things. This brings a level of scrutiny and, simply put, haterism. This has been a hard lesson for someone like myself to learn, but I say this, we must continue to show up and show out. We must remember that we have to be 30,000 times greater than our counterparts or our colleagues because they're expecting us to fail. It is not about them, however. It is about you. You, me, have to stand in our truth and represent those often forgotten. What does true leadership look like in our community? Rooted in empathy, not ego. In our space, ego needs to be always checked at the door. It has no place in supporting our most marginalized and vulnerable in our communities. A true leader uplifts, encourages, and authentically represents you. A true leader represents me. They have our best interest in mind, and they are also holding themselves accountable. They're also raising their hands when they don't have the answer or know what to do in certain situations. They are supporting us. They are imploring us. They are advocating for us to step into our authenticity, to step into that joy, to step into finding the light. So often we talk about community, we talk about care, and we talk about calling each other out from time to time. But over the last couple of years, I've looked at this new term that I think is incredibly powerful and impactful and important. We need to call each other in. We need to address harm. There is some competition out there between organizations fighting for the same funding, fighting for the same patient population, etc. And a lack of community within our own spaces. These are issues within our own community. So often we don't like to address them. We don't like to hold ourselves accountable, but I think it is imperative now more than ever with what is happening to all of the funding being cut and happening with our communities. We have to start calling these things in. We have to recognize what's happening and do better. We have to do better. We have to continue to create safe and brave spaces rooted in love, not performance. We have to provide words of affirmation to those that are newly diagnosed. Put your arm around them. Hold their hand. Let them know that they are loved regardless. All of that holds and it offers love. It offers encouragement. It reassures to those that are recently navigating their new diagnosis. Their lives are changed. We don't know how each individual will handle or deal with that new diagnosis. So sit and listen. Sit and listen to understand. Sit and listen to understand in order to be and put yourself in their shoes, to see, to feel, to stand with them. Show them what real love looks like. Do not just use words for your performance. Be intentional in our actions, in showing up for those that are newly diagnosed. I love that word, intentional. We have to be intentional. The importance of calling in versus calling out and the power of accountability will take us further. It will allow the healing components. It will allow us to strive even further, even better, if we just call it in, recognize, figure out solutions to move forward, and ensure that every single voice is accounted for in that solution. So I want to take a quick pause and check in with the UCSF team. Is there any questions, comments? How are we looking?
Yes, there are a couple questions actually.
All right, so let's address some of those questions.
Perfect. We have someone asking, how can we as providers do better in supporting our clients of color?
Great question. Thank you so much for asking that, raising your hand and asking that. The best advice that I can give, and I think I alluded to this in my conversation a little bit, understand where they're coming from. Ask questions. If you're not a person of color, you don't know what space they're walking in. You don't know how they're going to receive the information. You don't know how they're going to handle the diagnosis. You don't know how they're going to move forward in navigating this new diagnosis. Ask questions. Ask what do they need. So often in my experience, especially being in California and being in places like Kaiser Permanente, I experienced where a non-doctor of color or nurse practitioner would come in and it was boom, boom, boom. Got to get you in and out. Right? You're a number. What do you need? Okay, great. We'll come take your vitals and move to the next person. It took a very close relative to sit with me and say, and teach me how to be an advocate for myself, how to sit with a doctor and say, no, wait a minute. We're going to take more than these 2 minutes. I have questions, right? Encourage your patients to come in with their questions, to come in ready to absorb all the information as possible. We never know what each person is going through. People handle things differently. Their frames of references and their experiences are different. So ask questions of what do they need? How do they want you to show up for them? That's the best advice I can give with that.
Excellent response. Thank you so much. And we have a Jen on the chat as well asking, it might have been addressed already, but if there's anything that you might want to add to this question is, how can healthcare providers support aging Black men living with HIV in ways that honor both their medical needs and their joy, identity, and resilience? And you covered some of it, but if you would like to add more, we would love it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I just had a meeting recently with a provider in New York, and he expressed to me that he has seen an influx in trans patients. And he said to me, I have to admit, I am embarrassed to admit, I don't know how to culturally serve this patient population. And he was asking for referrals or pamphlets. What do I do? Is there training? All those sorts of things. One of the biggest things that I said to him in this meeting is lead with empathy. Try to understand experiences that folks are currently going through, right? We want to make sure that we're showing up culturally competently, right? There are courses and webinars and all sorts of things out there. Educate ourselves. Educate ourselves on how to think and understand for folks that don't look like us or have the same frames of references or experiences or resources. Obviously, we're typically dealing with the most vulnerable people in our societies and our communities. They're scared. They're nervous. There's a huge distrust with the Black LGBT community and doctors. We've known this historically, right? So go into working with that patient to understand who they are as a person. We want to be treated like a person. You, as the provider, when you go see your doctor, you want to be treated as a person, right? So just lead with that. Lead with love and care and seeking to understand what that person needs. Medical training, all of that is fantastic. It's fabulous. But sometimes it's not about the academic space. It's about the compassion. It's about the love. It's about understanding and realizing this is another human being that you want to help.
I love that response. I love that response. I mean, it sounds like certain ways of providing care can be transferable, regardless of the
Yes.
person's experience. So I love how you respond that. And one last question we have is that you mentioned that due to like the political landscape we're experiencing, siloed work isn't effective. So how can Black people, folks in general, living with HIV can create like a network of support within their communities that will help them thrive and extend that care to others?
Absolutely. So I think, and I've said this too, like we have to stand together. As cliche as it may sound, we have to hold hands and figure out how to support one another, how to show up in communities that don't necessarily look like us. We have to let folks know that we are still here. I think I've said that a few times too, right? We are here. We're not going anywhere, right? We know that new infection rates are still at an all-time high in places like where I live, Broward County, Miami-Dade County, right? So that says people are still not getting the education. There's still not enough awareness. There's still not enough programming. So figure out how to stand together and create that programming in the community, not just where your office is and expect people to come. If you build it, they will come, right? Not just in that space, but we have to go to where the community is. And we have to support each other. Black people have to show up for Black people, right? People of color have to show up for people of color, right? We know that historically, not the allies aren't always going to, and if they do, fantastic, but also continue to walk that walk with us, right? I think it's important that we figure out how to create our own funding systems, how to create our own funding networks, how to create our own funding streams, right? How to do that collectively. That's how we're going to be able to move forward, is if we do this together. I hope that answers your question.
Lovely. Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Terry. I just want to remind folks also that we have the Q&A feature available. So if you have any more questions, feel free to ask questions through that feature. We'll be reading them and presenting them to Terry. Thank you so much, Terry.
Awesome, awesome. So as I begin to wrap up today, I want to say that survival was the floor. Thriving is the goal. We must move beyond survival into a life of purpose, a life of pride, and a life of fulfillment. We need to continue reframing the conversation around HIV. I have dedicated myself to a promise kept way back in 2006, a life worth living. Being HIV positive is a life sentence, but it's worth living for me. Again, we have to reframe the HIV conversation as a life to be lived fully, boldly, and beautifully. I constantly am reflecting on the time period where I became HIV positive and how it was then for me and how it is now. It has drastically changed. So I can only imagine what it is for those dealing with those newly diagnoses now. Technology's changed, culture has changed, pop culture has changed. So many different things and newer ways of life. So ideologies have changed. But at the end of the day, we're still human. We still deserve love. We still deserve to be standing boldly with everyone else that doesn't have this experience. The legacy that I am creating through my books, my work, and my voice are always that I fulfill my promise that I made to myself back in 2006. I encourage others to take their own vow, to make your own vow, to live, to thrive, and to uplift, right? With great privilege comes responsibility. We have not only a duty, but a responsibility to empower others. And in closing, I would like to say, aging Ebony, aging boldly, the future is ours to write. Honoring the power pride and legacy of aging Black gay men that are thriving with HIV must remain. We need to continue affirming that aging is a blessing, not a burden. That joy is not just possible, it is necessary. We carry these things with us daily. It is in our stories, it is our strength, and we have to protect them fiercely. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's conversation. Thank you so much again to the UCSF Alliance project team. It has been truly an honor to be here with you all today, and I hope there's at least one small part of today's conversation that you will take away with you and that you will help impact someone positively, that you will influence someone to understand that aging Black and Black boy joy, all of these things just makes us up of who we are, and we deserve to still be here.
Thank you so much, Terry, for that. So next, we are going to leave some space for some questions if anyone has any. So let's do that. Let me share my screen really quick. So we'll leave some space for folks to type questions for a minute or so, and then after that, we'll wrap up.
No questions on my end. So
Okay.
I don't know if folks would like to come off mute and share their voice, their gratitude.
So if there are no further questions, then we can wrap this up. Thank you so much, Terry, for being here. Thank you for all of your wisdom, everything you shared today. So for this and for more webinars, if you found this helpful, if you want more of this content, please contact us at ahbtraining@ucsf.edu. And I think we just had a question. Can you check that real quick, Vivian, for me? I saw it just flash on my phone on my screen. Is there a question in the chat or no?
No, no question.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. All right. So again, if you have any questions about the training you saw today, if you want more of this content, and if you found it helpful, please contact us at ahbtraining@ucsf.edu. And I want to say again, thank you for being here, because you could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here. So I leave you with this. Not all that that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. That's a quote by James Baldwin. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, everyone.